But basically helping people. I think when I was in the corporate world, I never really had that connection with the customer. That feeling that you were really making a difference to the end customer. And I think ASC has given me that. I can use my business background and experience, and I can genuinely help people with their businesses all over Scotland. And I do enjoy driving around Scotland and passing various businesses that I've helped, and remembering the stories behind the people who now own those businesses. So yeah, it's really that connection, I think, with real people, helping them achieve their dreams. Yeah, and this is one of the key things that I like about ASC, and I think one of the reasons I was quite attracted to start a franchise up here in Scotland. It's really the focus on service. All the regional directors, myself included, we're all experienced business people, unlike the sort of box ticking people that you may come across in some banks. We understand the businesses that our clients are running. We don't do call centres. Clients speak to me throughout the process. They've got my mobile number. They can contact me at any time. And that focus and commitment on service, I think, is what separates ASC from much of the market, and definitely, I think, one of the main areas where we can help our clients. Yeah, this obviously was very much dictated, the market environment due to COVID, the response to that from lenders generally becoming a lot more restrictive about what they were doing. So it was an extremely challenging environment in which to secure lending, and so for any clients looking for funding, it was very tough indeed. So I think the highs for me were getting deals over the line, getting deals approved for clients in spite of those very, very difficult and challenging circumstances. We were successful with many clients, and that was a great success of 2021. Yeah, well, I think the mistake that I often see when say a business owner goes direct to a lender, so they might have tried lenders and then come to us as they haven't been successful. But when you boil it down, the mistake really is about the presentation of the case, and that's either they just didn't have time to put it together, or maybe not being aware of how a lender will look at a case and assess the case, the particular nuances of individual lenders in their approach to that. And I think that, again, this is part of the service that ASC offers, is very much a focus on that initial presentation, putting the case together, a very consistent presentation in what we do, making sure that we've got the supporting documents that tie in. We write up the case, and we tell the story behind the case to the lender. And the lender's not left fishing around trying to get information. They've got it all available to them in the pack that we present to them. And I think that presentation is a really strong area for ASC, and something that lenders regularly comment on as best in class when we do get feedback from lenders. Yeah, I think certainly these days, I mean, some of my colleagues who perhaps been in this environment for many years can speak to it more. It was perhaps much easier to get commercial funding a number of years ago, but certainly today, the level of due diligence by lenders is quite intense, quite excessive, and that level of scrutiny and level of due diligence can be pretty tough to work through. And I spend a lot of time just working through cases with underwriters, getting through that due diligence. And that can often be one of the most challenging aspects of getting a deal finally approved. Yeah, well, there have been a few interesting ones over the years, but the one I'd like is, in a small way, I think ASC can claim to have saved Christmas. I had a deal that was a couple living in Iceland, of all places. They owned a Scottish limited company, and that limited company pretty much did only one thing, and it imported containers of Christmas items every year, and to supply to various businesses around Scotland, all the various to see around the Christmas time. So they were struggling to secure funding to help them get the containers over here. They had to make some payments up front. to their Chinese suppliers. And the case was very unusual, obviously, for a number of different reasons there: the location of the applicants, the nature of the business, the lack of security in the deal. But we did manage to find a small niche lender who was able to provide that funding for them. And we successfully got the containers here in Scotland in time for the Christmas period. Yeah, again, there have been several over the years, but I think the one that always comes to mind with this type of question was one of my first deals. Actually, when I set up the office here in Scotland, I was sat in the office one day, and it was actually a walk-in client. So I had a little knock on the door, and this gentleman came in. And we had a good discussion about his business proposal. He had been in the smoked fish industry for many years, and he'd always wanted to set up his own business. He'd done a huge amount of work in preparing his case, business plans, projections. And this ties back to my earlier point about the presentation of cases. He had been rejected by lenders, which was the reason he see me. He was hugely passionate, and I really, really liked him. So I made the decision to try and help. We spent quite a bit of time reworking his case, reworking the presentation. It was challenging because we obviously had to go out to lenders who had already seen the case from his prior presentations and get them to reconsider the case, and that's very difficult to do that with lenders. However, with some perseverance, we did manage to get the door open with one particular lender, and that led to many more discussions, and eventually we did his funding. And then over the years since then, I've enjoyed hearing about the business and its successes as it's grown. It's got quite a reputation for quality produce. Its fish was on the Christmas menu at Gleneagles one year, and it's now a supplier to Harrods. So it's been fantastic seeing that growth from that early meeting in my office in the very, very early days of my business here in Scotland. Yeah, this is not so much one specific question. I think there's a whole bunch of different types of questions, but broadly they come down to one area, I think, and that's really this difference between residential lending, the type of lending that most people are used to, getting their home mortgage. The differences between that and commercial lending, and that can be through the overall cost of the transaction, through the amount of time that it takes, that level of due diligence that I mentioned earlier, the volume of documentation that's required to support the case. So, getting comfortable on that and understanding that is probably the main source of questions that I get from clients whenever I meet them.